In this session, I will cover the new productivity tools, and most of these tools that I'm going to review are available beginning in Chief Architect X17. Several of these features, like the project management mode, have dedicated videos that you can review for added detail. Let's begin this session by looking at the project management available in Chief Architect X17. One of the more significant features that we have introduced in Chief Architect X17 is a file management process called project management. The idea behind this concept is that the program will manage your files relating to your project that includes plans, layouts, your materials, and other assets for that project. If you have ever gone through a revision control and broken a link between the plan and layout, project management can help. Furthermore, if you've ever tried to export and share a plan and you're missing materials, project management can help. As I mentioned, this is a significant change, and if you're an existing customer, it might take a little bit of time to wrap your head around it, since the change is around moving files out of an individual folder and into a single container. You'll find several dedicated videos that go into further depth that can help you learn how the new project management works. And let me just point you to a couple of things related to this new project management. Underneath your preferences, there's a panel for project management. I have it enabled to use the Chief Architect Project Management. If you've done a new installation, this is going to typically be the default. However, when you go through the installation and migration, it will ask you if you want to enable project management, and here's where you can turn it on and turn it off. I wouldn't encourage you to do that. I would try to stay in one mode or the other. However, you can if you find that that is necessary for your work environment. Immediately below the project management mode is a backup of your managed resources. This backup of managed resources, as I show you this graphic, includes all of the components that are inside of your Chief Architect environment, and you can control the frequency and time for these backups. My example here, I have it set to be every 3 days, and then also at what time. Note, the program does need to be open for the backup to run. If it is closed and you reopen the program, it will then allow you can manually run that backup. Now, while this feature isn't new, I just want to point you to this under File Management is the autosave. Remember, the program is set up to do an autosave about every 5 minutes in my case. This can be helpful if you've lost power or you want to go back and retrieve an item. You can go in and pull this out of your auto archive. If you look at your folders, you can find out where your paths are. Underneath all program paths, click on the show option, and then for the archives folder, you can see where that is. You can also choose to open that up directly through this dialog, and then when you go into your archives, you'll have access to all of those archives folders. You might want to clean this out periodically. It can bulk up your disk a little bit. So make sure you're aware of using those archives. The next productivity feature, let's take a look at the ability to wrap your schedules. In this example door and window schedule, you can see that both the door and window schedule are pretty long, and I've wrapped those so that I can have multiple columns. In this sample plan, I placed a window schedule, and now when I open up the window schedule, you'll find a panel called Columns and Rows. Down about midway is the option for wrapping, and there's a few features in here. One of them is the number of entries per table, and I put in 7 here. That means that when we close this dialog, it will have 7 objects, and then it will display how many different tables that it would require to split this up. There's an option down here for your maximum table size. You can also scale that. The wrapping schedule offset, and that's going to give you a gap in between the different tables. How you want to justify the wrap tables. The table alignment, there's a few options in here. And then to display the title on the wrap tables, you can't really see this because I've zoomed out, but I'll show you this once we close this. If you want to have the title at the top of each one of the columns, and then also similar to display the column headings on the wrap tables. Let me go ahead and enable this to have 7 entries, and then we'll close the dialog. And this has split the window schedule into 3 unique tables. You see the gap in between there. You see the title is at the top of only one of these. Again, that was the option we kind of looked at. And then the column headers at the top of each one of these. So this will allow you to split your tables in a few different ways, and hopefully you don't have a gigantic table if you need to send that to layout, and you can send it at a scale that works a little better for you. New in X17 is the ability to add 3D text, as you can see here. Also 3D dimensions, not new. What is new is the ability to control temporary dimensions, whether that's in a 3D view, in an elevation view, or in a floor plan view. And you can control that based on your dimension defaults. Since I'm in this 3D view, let's just explore it here. If I click on this cabinet, you see my temporary dimensions right here. And let's move over to our floor plan view just so we can see this a little easier. When I click on the cabinet in this view, you can see that my temporary dimensions are in feet and inches, and maybe that's locating the stud layer, not really sure. Now I can actually control this based on a saved plan view, and that can be tied to a dimension default. That is accessed through your Edit Active view. And when you come into your selected defaults, you can change your dimension information. And I'm just going to, for the purpose of this, since it's kind of kitchen and bath related, I'm going to change this dimension default here to the kitchen and bath dimensions. And then underneath the edit option, there is a setup temporary panel. And this can be configured just like if I move down to the manual, can be controlled and manipulated just like you do your other dimensions. Underneath the setup temporary, you can come in and specify all the typical settings that you would like to see according to your preference. And if I just kind of come down here, and maybe we'll just turn off a few things to make this a little simpler. And I'm going to turn off pretty much everything with the exception of the cabinet sides. And now when I close this, let's go ahead and close both of these, and I click on the side of the cabinet, you can see that it's only measuring the cabinets, it's going to wall surfaces, it's in inches, and now I can control this temporary dimension in an elevation view, in a floor plan view, as well as a 3D view. So a nice added capability to manage how your temporary dimensions are going to display. A search tool has been implemented for the project browser. If I come in and I search for the term schedules for this open plan, it will quickly locate all the schedules that are contained inside of that plan. The other thing that is new inside of the project browser are folders. You can access these folders by turning on the setting to display them, and it is a way to organize your drawings. If you right-click on one of your projects, you can add this to a folder that can help assist with the management of your work environment. And the way you can add new folders down in the lower section of my project browser is the option to add a new folder, and you can see the different folders that I've already added in my particular work environment. Within the project browser, you can drag and drop 3D views, plan views, and elevations. In the layout, let me go ahead and delete the floor plan and the 3D view. And then I'm going to use the drag and drop. I've got my saved camera underneath the project, Bath 1. I'm going to pull that over into the layout, and this will open up the Send to Layout dialog. You can choose the various settings. I'll go ahead and accept the defaults. And once it's on the layout sheet, I'll click on it, I'll position it into the upper left-hand corner, and then I'll just resize that. I'm going to come down to the corner, press the letter X and concentrically resize that, and then I'll just position it back up into the corner. Now I can do the same thing with a saved plan view. I'll come down and grab the kitchen and bath saved plan view, pull it over into the layout sheet. Again, it will open up the Send to Layout dialog. If you want to change any of the information, such as the scale, go ahead and select OK. And then go ahead and pull that over. Let me zoom out so we can actually get this. Now the one thing you'll notice that it doesn't scope or send the view that you have on your screen. So you may need to come in and just kind of resize the shape of the viewport, and all I'm doing is clicking on the edge, pulling that in, and then we'll go ahead and pull that up into the corner, and it's going to be pretty close. So let's just pull that down and up. So new things you can do in the project browser: drag and drop 3D views, save plan views, and your elevations. The import settings for Chief Architect have been consolidated. Underneath the import category, let me first touch on legacy import. If you have older plans where you've already exported layer sets or default sets, wall definitions, that legacy import still works. When you want to import settings in the new fashion from the import settings from plan and layout, you can now browse out, find the particular plan that you want to import from, and I'll go ahead and select one here. And this will open up the import settings dialog, and you can come down and then you can choose specifically which category you want to import from: walls, save plan views, your note types, your layer sets, your default settings, and all the defaults that may exist in that plan, and then your default sets. This singular import allows you to choose all of the different settings that you can pull forward into another plan, and can be very useful to isolate very specific things you want to bring in. Angle snaps have now been separated underneath the general plan defaults in their own category. From here, you can choose from a predefined list of different increments for your angle snaps, and then you can choose additional angles. You can set up additional angles. To add a new angle, use the add function, and in this case, if I put in 35 degrees, you can see that it puts in the opposing angle. And if I want to add one more, let's put in minus 35 degrees. You can see that it puts in the opposing angles, and then you can choose to invoke these additional angles. You'll see a check mark right here. So if you're working in particular angle increments, you'll find this setting can help you. Let's take a look at a few things with electrical, specifically ganging switches, dimming, and then new refined dimensions for your electrical. Electrical switches and other items can be ganged together. You see this example where I have 3 switches, and if I just draw a marquee around all 3 switches, there's a gang option that I have in the lower edit menu: make ganged electrical block. When I gang the block, you notice in the 3D view it will consolidate into a singular switch, and then as you zoom in, you can also see the block in the 2D view as well. Once you have ganged this switch, notice that I have an electrical light over here, and I use the circuit tool and I come over and I can actually click that onto a specific element inside of the block so that it makes it easy to still identify each one of these items. If you open up the electrical gang box, there is an additional control that you can put into the gang specification, whether the plan view display, the 3D centered alignment, and then also in your schedules and materials list if you want to include the sub-objects, the individual switches. And so there's a few more controls over this inside of the specification dialog. When I click on the ganged electrical box in a 3D view, you can see the bounding box, and then if I come over and I click on the right hand switch, press the tab key so I can get the specific switch that I connected the circuit to, and you could click on this also in the 2D view and tab in and get this. There is a new dimming feature. This allows you to dim the lights. Let's go ahead and select this in the lower edit menu. This allows you to dim the lights along that circuit, so I can come in here and I can make an adjustment, and this is going to dim all of the lights along that circuit. Let's just go ahead and pull that down, and I'll zoom out a little bit. You can see that there's 4 or 5 lights here. It's going to dim those lights in a 3D view. So there's a quick way to adjust your lighting inside of the specific circuit for that light. You can also do that at the individual light level as well as through the adjust lights to adjust the dimming feature of the light. Let's broaden our plan view, and I want to talk a little bit about some refinement to dimensions with respect to electrical. I'm in my electrical plan view, and in the selected defaults, I have an electrical dimension default. And if we come in and take a look at what the settings are for the manual dimension in particular, then I'm going to go ahead and scroll down into the electrical category. We've added refinement for electrical for your dimensions. If I only want to dimension the lights when I'm in this manual mode, I'll remove the outlets and the switches. And when I use the dimension tool, come through and run my dimensions, you can see that it's only picking up the lights. Let me undo that once. And I'll repeat that one more time. Let's go back into the selected defaults for those dimensions and edit it. Come back down, and now I'm going to switch that from the lights to just outlets, rerun that same dimension, and we'll come over here and run the dimension. Notice that it's not picking up the recessed lights in this case. So this added refinement will allow you to dimension your electrical plans in a more precise manner. When you place a dishwasher in Chief Architect, previously you would place a cabinet and then place the dishwasher inside of the cabinet. And the benefit there was you got an automatic countertop. It was a little odd, however, especially for new users to figure out, well, usually I don't put a dishwasher in a cabinet, so why am I doing that? And now when you place a dishwasher, and I'm just going to grab this and slide this over into the spot over here. Whenever the fixture or appliance is adjacent to two cabinets, the fixture or appliance will now generate the countertop for you. So a lot more straightforward in actually how you do things in the field. And hopefully for the newer users, it's more obvious for you. So that's hopefully a new productivity feature. Again, it's just anytime it's next to a couple of cabinets, the automatic countertop will form. We've added the ability in your terrain editing to add a terrain reference point. This will be a point you can specify where the terrain will be at a specific location at a specific elevation. In previous versions, we've had this point. It's never been disclosed to you and was kind of an average somewhere inside the terrain. And the way you can access this, I'll double click on the terrain itself. Underneath of the general panel for the absolute elevation, I'm going to uncheck automatic. And there's a couple options here. One is the reference point, the other is contour 0. And I'm going to select the option for the reference point, and then you can set the surface at that point, and I'm just going to make it an even number. We'll use 24 inches, which is 24 inches below absolute 0, which would be the subfloor. And now when I close this, you see this point over here, and this is where at 24 inches, minus 24 inches, the terrain would be. And you can move this around. I've kind of got an arrow there. And so you can move that around and position it for your terrain. It also works in your 3D view. Click on the 3D view and you can move this around. The terrain must be selected so you can see the point, otherwise the point's not visible until you click on it, and then you can see where that reference point is. So the idea here is to help you in positioning exactly where a known point may be for your terrain location. In Chief Architect X17, we introduced the concept of 3D text. So I kind of zoom in here a little bit. This is a 3D text object, and when I click on this object, when we implemented 3D text, we implemented a move widget that allows you to select which plane you're going to move the text. We've taken that widget and applied it to other things like molding polylines. In this sample plumbing plan, let's kind of zoom in and take a look at how it can also be used. So I'm going to click on the end of this plumbing line, and you see the same move widget that allows me to do editing in this view. It's going to save me a little bit of time because previously I might have had to do an elevation in a couple of directions if I was doing a 3D plumbing plan. Now this gives me the ability to move this molding polyline in really most of the directions I'll need to move it in. So to move this plumbing line up, I'll select the direction and then just simply pull that up, and you can see that it easily moves it in the direction. And let's just do that one more time. I'll click on the edge here, click on the end diamond. You see the move widget, select the correct plane that I want to move it in, And now as I'm editing this, that move widget allows me to adjust the plane for this 3D molding polyline. So the move widget, also implemented for 3D text, was implemented for your 3D molding polylines as well. The next tool I want to discuss is stationary walkthroughs. We covered this in a dedicated session for walkthroughs. I just wanted to briefly touch on this. When you generate a camera view, and I've saved a camera view down here, you can see it down below, you can create a stationary walkthrough. As I click on this, you'll find the tool down in your lower edit menu to create a stationary walkthrough. And when you do this, I've got a few notes up here. You want to make sure you have a north pointer, a begin time, end time. They can be seasonal or time lapse, and then you can set the time duration. And as I switch over and look at the actual time lapse that's being generated here, it can be a pretty nice scenario that you can share to your client. Notice there's animated water in here, and allow you to see the seasonal or time lapse effects from the camera. This is a great new tool and pretty easy to use, so I'd point you to the capability of creating stationary walkthroughs. Another productivity tool that I like to use is the new material editor. This is a session that we did more detail on, and if you want to watch that, I would encourage you to learn more about it. If you're creating a tile installation diagram and want to make sure your tile looks good, you can use this tool to make it happen. Underneath the 3D menu is the option to adjust materials, and it's called the interactive material editor. And when I go into this mode, I can click on the material and you see the reticule that comes in here. I can now actually move this tile around and adjust it. Now I also have line drawing on. This works in a standard view, and I turn line drawing on with the material and the pattern synced. And to kind of put this in context, let's switch over to an elevation view. And this is in a vector view, and I would need to switch it over to a standard view to make sure that I can adjust this material. And if you zoom in, let's kind of pick on this tile at the very bottom and assume that you want the tile to maybe start at a full tile at the very bottom of the run here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the camera back over to the standard view here. And the key to this is I have the pattern and texture in sync. I also have line drawing turned on so I can easily see that. Now underneath the 3D menu, when I come down into the interactive material editor, let's zoom in a little bit closer so we can click on something down here. And I'm going to click on the corner down right in here, and there's a little crosshair, probably really difficult to see in the stream here. Where I click that reticule, you see the little point down here. I can now move that around, and that becomes a move handle. So I'm going to slide that back into the corner right down here, and we'll call that pretty close to having a full run there. And once that refreshes, you can see the tile run is now at the bottom. Let's switch the camera view back over to the vector style view. And I was able to move that tile to begin the full tile run right at the bottom of the floor. Interactive material editor can be helpful if you're doing a tile installation diagram. If you're a kitchen and bath designer or interior designer and tile's important to you, I would encourage you to look at the new material builder. You can access the material builder underneath the 3D menu called Material Builder. There are several builders available. This is another subject that you can watch a detailed session on. So it ranges from masonry, tile, wood, and then you can use external builders if you want to do that. This allows you to come in and make specific tiles. I like to replicate this from a manufacturer. Gives you nice grout lines. You can control the grout color. You can control the tile style. So if I switch this over to Picket, it will use all of those settings, and I'll usually just spec it out from the manufacturer, and it will give you all the material maps. If you kind of zoom in and look at this, it allows you to kind of dial in exactly. You can see the grout lines, you can see the curvature, and a really great tool to take a look at and use as an interior designer. And again, watch the other session on this. A lot of good detail on how to use the material builder, and now it's integrated right into the program. The last productivity tip I'm going to point you to is the ability to use AI in your rendering technologies. We always hear a lot about AI going on, and one of the great uses of that is maybe preliminary discussions with your clients in helping dial in what they're interested in. And we continue to monitor AI, and one of the things that we've done is NVIDIA has released a new technology called Deep Learning Supersampling, short for DLSS. And it allows you to, in particular for walkthroughs, and I'll show you this in a minute, really speed up the rendering. You can access this. I'm going to go into the Edit Active View tool here. And for the camera, it's applicable to anything that's ray traced, so either the physically based or the clay for ray tracing. And there's a setting called DLSS, real-time denoising. And note the word experimental. If you ever used AI and some strange things happen, well, that may happen. And so just beware of that as we continue to refine this. Hopefully it will get better and better. I'm going to switch over, and the walkthrough that I'm going to play here, this is done in a ray trace at 30 frames per second. I recorded this without the real-time denoising on, and it took about 6 hours. And when I re-recorded this using the new setting for the real-time denoising, it took a couple of minutes. It significantly reduced the rendering time. Yeah, there will be a few things in here that may not be as nice, maybe a little bit of smudging on the glass. However, it's so fast that I can put this out pretty quickly, share it with the clients, and maybe you can benefit from it. So take a look at it. It's a setting called real-time denoising. Works on NVIDIA products right now. Well, that wraps up this session for productivity tips. You can download the latest version of Chief Architect and start looking at some of these new tools. Thanks for watching.
We have Anna here with a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, Anna.
Hi, Anna from Muskego, Wisconsin, logging in.
Okay.
And I am an instructor, and one of the hardest things that I have trouble with teaching students is scaling schedules. So they learn in AutoCAD, annotative, and we kind of teach them to make most things at like 3/32 of a height, things like that. So then I come to Architect for my kitchen and bath classes, and I'm trying to come up with like a standard way to teach this. And I'm not able to do it because maybe I'm not understanding myself. So I see the scale, but I'm trying to understand in terms of scaling and the text height output, how that works in Chief, if that makes sense.
So on your screen, Anna, when you're working in the program, you're working in a one-to-one relationship as far as scale goes. And let me just pull open one of my schedules here so we can kind of look at that. And I'm just going to open up some notes here. So this is a note schedule. And when I click on this note schedule and I look at what layer this is on, it's on the schedule layer. And so the text style is being controlled by the schedule. So I hit the define button down here in the lower right hand corner. Do you see that?
Yep.
So when I hit the define button, that schedule style, it looks like it's using a 6-inch style. And so I could make a copy of this, and you said you were using what, 3/32?
Yes.
So I could build a scale, right? And let me just make a copy of that. Copy.
That character height of 6 inches, what does that refer? Because it's not 6 inches on the page. What does that refer? It's not the printable.
It will depend on what scale you send this to the layout at. Okay. So let me just cancel this, and let's grab a layout. File.
So like in CAD, I have that scale factor. I have like a little chart. So it says if I want it to be at this scale, make it this height. But when I use that in Chief, it doesn't work out.
So when I send this out to my layout sheet, right?
Yep.
So my scale right here, when I send that out at 1/4 inch.
Yep.
I don't have my little scale cheat sheet here, but that's 6-inch text I think we were looking at, right?
Yep.
And so when I convert that down to 1/4 inch, and we do the math on that, what is that, 2 inches or something, or 1.5 inches? Somebody probably can jump in and see that. Can everybody see my screen? I see somebody saying they can't see my screen. Everybody, you see that okay, Anna?
Oh yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So whatever it's set at, so let's say it's set at 6, we do half inch scale, the output's going to be 3.
Right. And so if I'm sending it at quarter, you got your little cheat sheet there. Is that like 2 inches or something?
I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah. Anyways, so if
2 1/4 or something. Yeah.
so to make it simple, what you could do is you could change the scale to 1 inch equals 1 foot, right? Or you could
Yeah.
even make it 1 foot, so it's a 1 to 1.
I want 1 to 1 so I can put in the text height I want instead of
Exactly. And then when you send it out, that would be the text scaled at that right level. Does that make sense?
Why didn't I think of that? So I can just go in and create a new not layer set.
In my case, I had a text style, and that
a
was
text
down here.
style.
Right,
Instead
that was
of-
down.
Yep,
Mhm.
to the couple different heights and then 1 to 1. Got it. That's
Right.
what I'll do.
And I've got several of them, so it just depends on what I'm trying to accomplish there.
And then when I do that text wrapping, that's what made me think of this.
Yeah.
And it keeps that. Can I make the header a different size still? Yeah.
Yeah, there is an option in here if you go down to your header information and your
Yeah.
title information, so you have control over that. And again, depending on how you want it to look and what the scales are, and then you can kind of dial that in and get a little secret recipe for your students.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Got our
Okay.
next question is from Brandon. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Scott. Calling
Hey,
from
Brandon.
Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, welcome Columbus.
So this is about the file management thing. Kind of a brief thing about our structure now. We're using a file server, as opposed to cloud-based things. So we have a file server. That doesn't mean that one person doesn't take a plan all the way to the end, but we do collaborate on things. I get a certain amount of stuff done, then I hand it off and what have you. And then I also work at home, and quite often I'm pulling files, well, just over the wire, we'll say, to my home computer because it's a little faster than my work computer.
Okay.
So my question is, in this whole thing is like, there's a lot going on here. Where does the file management stores it locally though, correct?
Okay, so
or maybe in a specified location, I guess is maybe a better way to put it.
Yeah, let me kind of make sure I'm understanding the question and also put some context into it. We've had traditional file management, and we still have that with X17. And then we have a new variation of the file management called project management. And so in traditional file management, your plan file, your layout file, and then all of the assets for your material, images, tiles, those kinds of things, you would typically back those up to a zip file or something like that so that you had access to those. And you could either move those around on your network, put them up on a cloud, and figure out the best way to move those around. And is your question around the traditional file management, or is it around the new method?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing what we're doing and have been for a while as far as how we manage the things. It's more about how the new one, how the new one takes over, if it would take over, because again, back to multiple computers, multiple people touching it, and or multiple locations.
Right, right. So typically with traditional file management, you've got a project, in this case, Smith Residence, you have a plan, a layout, and your zip file, and then that's a backup of all of your assets in there. And so that would work on a network and on a cloud file. So what we are now doing, and obviously if you change the name of your plan file, right, a lot of people can get in a situation where they break those links to the layout because they've done a save as, and it gets a little bit, interesting, because if you don't understand how that's changing the name of the file and how it's linked, people get in a bad situation. So we've introduced the concept of project management. And it's basically a single bundle. You change the file name, we manage it. You do a revision, we change it for you. And so when you're working in a multi-computer, multi-user environment, there is an export option with this project bundle. We call them Chief Architect CA projects, and it's a single export file. And that's what you can then move around on a thumb drive on a network. You can also move them around on a cloud if you need to. I think the tech team is kind of discouraging that until we introduce our cloud version of it. And so maybe you can kind of poke a couple of questions in about exactly, you know, how this can help you.
Got it. Yeah, it's just hard to understand a little bit of, you know, based on, hey, for essentially decades of working with Chief in its sort of set ways, you know, it's just, as I said, I bring a file to my computer, you know, a drag and drop over the internet, you know, and it's like, okay, well, where's that reside now? It just moved your cheese a little bit, just trying to get my head around it a little more.
What I would encourage you to do, we did a dedicated session on this 5 or 6 weeks ago. And I would encourage you to maybe rewatch that. I think we also broke that into some very specific videos. And as I kind of mentioned at the my introductory remarks, if you're an old dog out there using Chief Architect with traditional file management, it might take a little bit for you to say, well, how is this working? Because you're not going to find these files on your hard drive anymore. It's a single bundle and it's managed by the program to try to help people in manage links and assets between plans and layouts.
Gotcha. Well, hey, thanks.
So I would go out there and watch that session and or videos. It's a lot more detailed than my cursory remarks that I've kind of had on this.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon.
All right, Scott, our next question is from David. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Scott. This is David Merrick in Kensington. This is a follow-up on Brandon's question.
Okay.
If I use file management and it creates all these files and I open it up on another computer, does it bring those files into my user library at all so that we're building a common library between all the users in the program, or is it staying with the plan?
Okay, so David, your question here. When I work with multiple people and I take this project file that the program is creating, are any of the assets, such as the materials, being pushed into the user library? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
So the answer is no, it's not putting it into your library. It's bundling it with this project. And so anybody that opens up this project file that you have shared it with will have everything they need. Now, if you're building a library and you want to manage that, that's where you can export materials and create a library, and you can then share that. So that is a separate operation if you want a library of materials.
I noticed when you were showing the file management file locations, you had libraries in Dropbox. You had data files on the local computer. So can we create a shared library for all of us to be using in the cloud? You
can, yeah. So there's some caveats with that, and we have a knowledge base article. Maybe somebody can chat that out, or if not, you can search in the knowledge base. But there's let me open up my library. And I'm not sure if I've got my library on the cloud or not, but if I open up one of my projects, I store my own libraries in here for projects. And I think, let me see, check my preferences, but you can store that up onto a cloud service and share it. You want to make sure that you kind of have one person that is overseeing that library, because if you get a few people editing that library, pushing woods or tiles into that, you can get crosswise with that, and maybe somebody steps on one of the objects. So be sure somebody kind of owns the library management process. And underneath your preferences, where is that? Let's see if I'm not sure if where I have my libraries. I probably moved them in X17, and it'd take me a while to open those up. Yeah. Yeah, in X17, I'm not using that process. I'm using the asset store. So, but check the knowledge base article, and you can see if it makes sense to use a common library location for those.
I know when we've tried it, it seems like when someone adds something to a library, it broke the whole thing.
Well, like I said, take a look at that article. There
Yeah.
are some caveats to that, and I would just make sure you kind of assign a point person to manage that library, or if somebody's going to manage it from a certain day, then you want to have that in place.
So looking forward to X18. Is the
Oh my.
is the cloud going to help this problem?
Well, so project management has been a key thing that we've been working on, and we wanted to release the cloud in concert with that. However, we just really weren't in a position to release that quite yet. So the cloud portion of this would be in a future release. So that would make sharing even easier, because then it minimizes the need to export and import and those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, should I just stumble through until you release it rather than bang my head against the wall?
Yeah, it depends. I've been using the program for a long time. I didn't really want to use project management, but after using it, there's a lot of value in there. I've been able to manage my projects quite easily, and I've got examples where it is easy with your your as-builts, your revision controls, so you can come in here and create folders for revision management, and there's a lot of benefit to it. So before dismissing it, I would at least encourage you to go back and rewatch our session that we did 6 or so weeks ago on this, and spend a few hours and see what you think.
Yeah, okay. But it will build into the cloud version. It's not going to be you're not going to abandon this project management feature as the cloud comes out.
So the cloud will be part of project management, and
so we should learn it now.
It will be an extension of this. It should minimize and avoid the need really to do export and import, and make it really a lot easier to work in a multi-team environment for that sort of condition.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, Dave.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have time for a couple more questions?
Yeah, why don't we take 2 more, and then I'll go through some closing remarks. If you still have questions, because I want to be courteous to everybody's time, then we will probably come back and make sure that we try to get most of those questions. So let's take a look at 2 more, and I'll go through some remarks.
All right, our next question is from Leslie. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, this is Leslie Cohen in Raleigh. Sorry, I'm also on the project manager, and I will need to go back and go through all that in detail. The .ca proj file is the database of all the projects, right?
So, Leslie, the project bundle is a project that would be kind of specific to a client's plan and layout and all the assets. And so you can think of it as I kind of move back into the program here. Let me just slide that over on my other screen. I've got a project open here for a bath, okay?
Yes.
And so when I go to export this, okay, it's going to allow me to pick and choose what I want to export, but I typically export everything that's in here. And when I push that out as that export, then what ends up happening is it creates this project bundle, this CA proj file.
Okay.
And I actually store that in my backup folder because I like to have a backup of things. And so using traditional file management, if I digress here just a little bit, so this is the old file management.
Right.
I will typically still have a Smith Residence folder on my disk, and I'll just put these in my backup folder. And that way I have access to it. Now, some people replicate this on a cloud machine, so that works as well. But I will periodically save and export those out, but that export file would be a single CA proj file based on that. There is a backup of your entire system. That's a separate
Okay,
file.
so the database though that all your projects are in now, when you start using the project management, that's part of the program, or is it a data file? And I'm asking that because I have the program, right, on multiple computers.
Mm-hmm.
All data
Mm-hmm.
is on my server.
Okay.
Can you separate your project management bundle, the whole thing? Is it in the program or is it a data file?
So your projects are in the program. Okay, so if you've got 2 computers, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to end up doing is I've taken this project and I'm getting ready to export it, right? So I click the export button. It's going to ask me which ones I'm going to do, and I'm going to export it.
Okay. Right.
Once I've exported it, I now have a physical file. It's a CA proj file, right?
Yes.
It's a file, and I'm either going to put that on a thumb drive, on a network, or cloud some other way, and I'm going to get it over to computer number 2. And I can import that. I can double click on it, and now it will be on computer number 2. Now, on computer number 2, if I do something to the plan, move walls, add windows, I'm going to rebundle it, export it, and push it back over to computer number 1.
Okay, so it's different because right now all client data, all my client files, everything's on the server. So
Okay.
I don't do any exporting whatsoever.
Okay.
I just open up the server files.
Right.
But you still have to have Chief Architect, the program on each computer, and that's what I was trying to determine.
Yeah.
So could you go into your preferences and point to where this lives, or is it technically built into the program that has to live on each computer?
It's built in, and
okay.
And since we don't have the cloud integrated into this version,
Got it.
we still have the traditional file management system in place.
Yes.
And you can continue to work in the same manner that you're working. So you don't have to use this, and it's possibly going to be easier for many people to continue down that path until we release the cloud.
Thank you for differentiating. That's what I was
Okay.
trying to get to where it lives.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a big change, and there's lots of questions, and so it's good to get through those. And if anybody wants to rewatch that session, it was about 6 weeks ago, and it's on our video system. But thanks a lot for calling in, Leslie. Let's see. How about one more question? We'll go through some closure, and then if there's still questions, I'm going to come back and make sure we address those. So, Carrie.
Right. Sounds good. Our next question is from Mark. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, Scott. It's Mark from Montana.
Mark from Montana. What part of Montana?
Butte.
Oh,
Old historic town of Butte.
That's a Butte. Okay.
So basically, I'm another OG, and so I'm having some of these heartache with the new project management.
Mm-hmm.
One of my issues is that my machine is a max of 2 terabytes. I do some large LiDAR files already.
Did you say it was a Mac?
Maximum of 2 terabytes.
Oh, maximum. I see.
All I can put in my machine, the board will not accept a larger drive.
Oh.
So in other words, to have fast access. Can I put external storage? Yes. So my understanding is that now, every time I make a new version of a project, that all the materials are being replicated, and they're not just accessing the library, they're replicated for each version. So if I've got 10 versions of a house, that until we get refined, it's using up a whole lot of storage. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
So I think your concern is you have limited disk space and you want to make sure you understand how we are managing these projects so that you don't use more disk space than you need to. Is that fair?
Yeah, because I'm pretty allocated with these LiDAR scans are huge.
Yeah. So I have a project open on the far right-hand side of my screen here, Mark.
Okay.
And so there's my main folder where I've got the bath. I've got my as-built. I've got some revisions to this, 4 or 5 copies of revisions, right?
Yes.
And most of these have the same tile in the bathroom.
Okay.
Okay. And so when I export in this entire project and all these files are in here, really that asset, the tile, is not being replicated across however many copies of the plan. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 copies of the plan, right? That's not being replicated 6 times per se. So
And is that because it's in the master folder?
It's bundled into that project file. And so your materials inside this project file and this graphic are inside of that project file. And there's no reason for us to keep 28 copies of a glass tile that are exactly the same, since we know that the tile is a duplicate.
So the big CA project that can hold all of my versions has 1 copy in it.
Correct.
Okay, that helps a lot. The one thing that I really wish you had not got rid of was backup entire plan, because then I could adjust to getting used to this, but it can't adjust to getting used to it because that went away. So there's no way to keep my.
Just to be clear
anymore, right? I can't manage it.
Yeah, in the project management world, and it's by choice if you want to use this. So there's still the traditional file management mode that you're used to, and then there's this project mode. And you don't have to use this new project mode. We don't want to force this on anybody. If you find there's value in it, great. But if you want to back up this file, right? If I click on this file and I go to back it up, which is export, I can pick and choose what I want to export out of it. So I may not want to export the as-built files out or the revision files out. I can save that off. I can put it wherever I want. I have an archive of it. And if I determine in my file management system, and I'm going to come into my preferences here, and for the benefit of everybody, there is a new folder up here called Project Management. And when I have this turned on, I'm in this project management mode. If you determine, gosh, I need to work with the cloud, or I'm just not comfortable with using this system yet, I need to learn more, don't. And if you're coming from a previous version, we'll ask you when you do the installation, do you want to use it, yes or no? And if you accidentally chose the wrong option, you can always change this. And when you turn this off, right, it's going to give me, some messages that I can't turn it off because I've got some files open. But when you turn that off, you'll go into traditional file management. So there is 0 change between the previous version and this version. And you do not feel like you need to use project management.
So I have a less powerful machine that I've kept out of project management. But what I've noticed, I don't back up. Backup entire plan is gone. Is that correct?
No, it shouldn't be. I don't have easy access to that. Does somebody, does one of our other chief staffers have the answer to that question? If you're not in, if you're in the traditional file mode in X17 as backup entire plan, have we renamed that? Have we done something different to it? Anybody?
Hey, Scott, Josh here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did rename it. It's called Export Plan as Project or Export Layout as Project. And it's in that same file menu.
Okay, so it's just renamed, same function.
Similar function, yes. It will create a project file with all of your assets. And then that project file does have to be imported into the program. But it will kind of unpack even in that traditional file management mode.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I think today when you do a backup of entire plan, it creates a zip file, right? Typically.
That's in X16 and prior.
Yeah, so it creates a zip file in X16 and prior. And when you're backing up in X17, the CA project file is effectively a zip file. So if you were to think of it that way, in fact, you could probably rename it zip and it would probably work. But it's the same concept of it. Is that fair, Josh?
So Josh, is that also compressed?
Yes, that is fair. It is a compressed file.
Okay. Those are great things to know.
Yeah, lots of things around project management. So 6 weeks ago, we did a special session on that dedicated to project management. Take a look at it. And if you think there's value in it, use it. If you think that, gosh, I would rather wait until there's more cloud access and I can put some more thought around it, don't feel like you need to use it. So we've set it up to have both project management and traditional file management. So depending on how you'd like to work. So with that said, I'm going to do a few closing remarks. I think there's still some questions out there. I will come back on, but I want to do a few closing remarks. First of all, thank you everybody for attending today's session. It is recorded, so we'll be sending out a recording of this in the next day or two. There will be a survey request in there. You know, everybody wants to see how they're doing, and if you would mind sharing, we'd appreciate your feedback. So a few things coming up. And I'll just point out that, where is that image here? Here we go. So first of all, X17 beta, you can download it today and you can pull that out of your digital locker. It is beta. The full release is scheduled down here in the bottom of my screen. The full release is scheduled the end of June. So if you want to wait for a little bit of time, then that will be available. Our next event coming up is the Chief Academy. So this is the latter part of August. It's a great time to come to our headquarters in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And we do a couple of days of training. We do a lab day where you can bring in your own project. You can work on the class projects and you can pick the instructor's brains, other students. And it's a great opportunity to also social and network. We do lake cruise, we do river receptions, and so it's a great time. If you can make it, we would love to see you in Idaho. A few other things coming up. We've got a kitchen and bath boot camp tomorrow, so if you want to learn some of the more basic things and you're new-ish or newer to the program, this is a nice opportunity. It's free, it's boot camp. We're doing the same thing for residential. That would be the following Friday, and so those are boot camps and available for free. And we hope to see everybody here in Coeur d'Alene this summer. And with that said, I'm going to let everybody go. I will stay on and we're going to take a few more questions. So if you need to go, have a great day and we hope to see you soon. With that, Carrie, are there still a couple of questions out there?
We have a few more, and next is Melissa. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey Scott, it's Melissa in Austin. I was calling to find out, I wanted to know about the AI NVIDIA card. I think my computer is from 2020, a Dell Windows.
Okay.
How do I know if I'm equipped to do that walkthrough?
Yeah, good question. So in your preferences for your computer, let me come into my preferences. There is an option down towards the bottom called video card status.
Okay.
So I'll kind of pause on here. And so if you come on to this, it will give you information about your video card. And so that AI-based, it's deep learning super sampling from NVIDIA, does require an NVIDIA, I don't think it's just limited RTX, but it's typically an RTX card. RTX cards, I think, started releasing, I think, like 2080 or 2070s. And so those cards will typically support it. Obviously won't be as fast as the new 5090s or whatever they're shipping today. And you'll notice in my system here, it says the DLSS real-time denoising is supported, yes. And the other key to that is hardware ray tracing. So those would both be dependent on the hardware ray tracing. So check it out in your preferences to see if your system supports it.
Is there a way to update that card in your system?
If you're using a desktop, typically yes. If you're using a laptop, typically no. And if you're using a Mac, also typically no.
So if you're using a desktop, what would it take to have that card changed?
Well, you pull out your credit card and you go down to your local Best Buy and you tell them you want the whatever RTX something video card. We've got, I don't know if I have that. We've got a buying graphic up on the website. I'll pull up a shortcut cheat sheet to this. So at the very bottom of this is speed that we kind of benchmark the computers. At the very bottom is the best card. That's the RTX 5080. We don't have the 5090 on here yet, so that would be even faster. So it kind of goes, if you picked on, you said your card's pretty old, it's a 2060. And so then you can see how it compares. And then I'm imagining the comparison chart to this that has dollars on it looks the same. Right?
Okay, yeah. And then one more quick question, that measurement cheat sheet on 1/4 inch equals, you know, whatever, where do I find that cheat sheet?
Probably online somewhere.
Okay.
There's scale conversion. So if you're sending 6-inch text out at 1/4 inch scale, I've got one. I don't have it handy here, but I just kind of keep it near my desk, and well, apparently not today, but then you can have that access. And so depending on what scale you're sending stuff out and what your inch size is for your text, it will kind of, it's nice to have that cheat sheet, and you can just find one, I think, online typically.
Scale conversion cheat sheet. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right then. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Pat, we have Vicki Worcester here. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Scott. Vicki over in Bend. First, I want to mention something to the last caller. If your print on your drawing, on your plan, is 6 inches, at 1/4 inch, it'll be 1/8 inch printed size. And if you want to go down to 3/32, make your text size 4.5 inches. Okay, now my question.
By the way, thank you for clearing that up for us.
Oh, and there are other ones. I have my own little cheat sheet, but those are the standard ones anyway. I saw the presentation on the project management, and if I remember correctly, these no longer going to be on your Explorer file management. It's going to be within Chief, correct?
So when you're working on a project and it's embedded inside the program, you're not going to see that file on your disk unless you physically do an export, and that's not the live file you're working on. So the live file you're working on, you do not see it in your disk. It's only in the project browser inside the program.
Okay, so with the project browser, you mentioned we can make folders within that.
Right.
On my Outlook or Explorer, I have all these different files for, I'm doing stock plans. So plans that are published, plans that I'm working on, plans that are just ideas. Can I set up folders like that in the project browser to store and separate the different projects?
So I've opened up my graphic that I typically use for a project. And so, you know, I've got all these folders and this is physically on my disk, right?
Mhm.
And you want to stick out folders inside your project management, right?
Yeah,
And
so that you'd have the Smith and the Jones and the Johnson projects all under one folder as being, these have been published or whatever category. Can you do that?
So let's dissect this a little bit, Vicki. The folders that we have, and let me turn those on because I think it's turned off. So I have a handful of folders down here in the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when these are basically shortcuts, so I'm not going to actually be able to drag this down into the archive and have it disappear from up here. So these are just kind of shortcuts. So if I click on these, you can see my as-built folder only has one file. So this is kind of a filter view up here.
Okay.
So these are kind of tags with that. Okay. Now, if you want to, let me close that so I'm seeing everything. If you want to create a folder network, you can come in and I'm going to pause here. Maybe Josh knows the answer. Josh, can I have a folder called master, plans for 2026 and then have a whole bunch of different folders underneath of those? Let's see.
This would be like, say you wanted to take Hawk's Nest, Bachelor View, and Tucson and put them in one folder. Can that be done?
Yeah, so I've opened up my HD 26 plans, okay? And I created a new folder. And let's call this Plan 1, right? And now I've got Plan 1, and then I can do the same thing. Open it up, new folder, and this might be sample 23, 24. So now I've got different folders, and I think you might be able to use that for what you're talking about, Vicki.
Okay.
So just right click on that, and it was the new folder option.
Okay, I'll give that a try. It seems like it would be easier to manage it within Chief than to constantly export out to File Explorer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I want to be able to export to my laptop, but I need to have a place to organize the different projects into folders.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of value in the project management, and for those that it works for, it can be great. For others, maybe it's not quite a fit yet.
Yeah, I think it's going to work for me. I just have to figure out a few little finessing things.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Scott.
Okay, have a great day.
You want to take a few more questions, Scott?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, next up is John. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. All right, let's check in with Kareem. Hi, Kareem. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. We have Leslie here with a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Leslie.
Hi, this is Leslie again from Raleigh. I think I sort of know the answer already. Back to the project management, I am assuming that it's going to require a lot more local storage on my actual computer if I move to this project management. Since I've got all my client files on a server right now and all of the data files actually are on a server, all of that's going to come back onto the individual computer now.
Right, and so it will take up more storage than I think your previous process of storing those on a network.
Okay, so I'll run out of space.
Do you only work, Leslie, do you only work on that network?
Yes.
Well, staff is probably not going to like me. In my preferences, okay, for project management, I have an option here for local storage. And most people's local storage might be their C drive, right? So I have a secondary SSD drive that I mainly use to store my plans on. And so I pointed to that drive. And that can be your, Josh, is it okay to say that? Josh, you out there?
That should be a local drive only, yes.
Okay, so local drive. So in her case, she's got a network drive, and your answer would be, don't tell them to do that.
Not with project management, no. Use traditional file management in that case.
Am I violating the rules of the law here by you pointing it to my local secondary drive?
That's fine as well, as long as it's a local drive installed on the machine.
So it cannot be a external drive that I plug in?
It's not recommended. Not recommended.
Okay. Well, that just answers it for me because I don't have enough storage on my various machines. So even though I'd love all that functionality, I would have to, I have multiple laptops and only one desktop. So there's, I probably can't increase storage enough. Okay.
Yeah, and so again, it kind of comes down, Leslie, maybe this feature isn't for everybody, and we think that when we introduce the cloud, it should be more applicable to a broader audience. You can leverage some of the advantages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, do we have time for 2 more questions?
Yeah.
Okay, we have Lucas here. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey Scott, Lucas. I'm out of Janesville, Wisconsin. My question here is not in regards to project management. Actually, here I'm gonna point you back towards the material builder. In that regard, I've been finding myself that my tile installers have been, ever since I showed them that I could do more in-depth tile layouts. They've been really asking for that and have been really kind of digging into me to get super detailed in those. One thing that I've been struggling with is a lot of my owners, in doing my 3D views and that kind of stuff, they're wanting to use the actual material that we're using. And I'm finding myself going out to the website, grabbing a crappy JPEG of the actual tile, best pictures that I can get, and they're wanting to see that. And where I'm struggling with is taking that, creating that material, and then actually being able to show, like on a large format, which I'm calling like a 12x24 tile, actually showing like a 1/3 stack offset and playing with the offsets in that material builder to get it to replicate exactly how I want to. And what it has boiled down to is just doing, like, say, a wall elevation, plastering that picture repeated, and then physically drawing in my grout lines using CAD lines to actually lay out the cabinet, or actually lay out those tiles exactly how I want them. Do you have any pointers in that direction that might save me some time in actually physically drawing those CAD lines exactly, or should I just be referencing back to the videos and kind of just dig into that and figure out what might be the best way to go about it?
Yeah, it sounds like you might bleed to death from paper cuts there. So to be, what you're doing will work. It can be time consuming, but if I understand, you're drawing CAD lines, you've found an image on the internet, and you're then pasting that in that elevation view, so you kind of get the look for the exact tile you're using.
Yeah, I think the kind of what's going on. So what I'll do is kind of go in and just create an image or create a new material, grab that image off the website or Dell Tile, or find something that's relatively close in the database. And it might be formatted as a 12x12 in there. I'm actually using it in a 12x24 format, and end up having, like, the drawing that I have in front of me right now is, it's a 12x24 tile, and it's just repeated square stacked right on top of each other. And I actually wanted to show as a 1/3 offset, and they're very particular about left and right balancing. Obviously the new tool with the what is it, the interactive, well, I can't remember, the interactive material editor, being able to and or adjusting the material definitions, kind of shifting those back and forth like you showed earlier, or vertically up and down to kind of get that layout. One thing I did want to point out that I did notice, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly, is that adjusts that entire material. So say I have like a wet wall, dry wall, or front back wall, and then the long wall and the shower. If I wanted to adjust those independently, I need to be creating independent materials for those 3 locations within my library browser or database, because if I move one, it's going to adjust the other one, correct?
Yeah, so let's kind of dissect a few of these things. So I've got this orange base tile in 3 locations. And when you use the tool called Adjust Material Definition, there's a scoping option down here in the lower left-hand corner. So if I just want to adjust the orange tile in the middle of the room, I might go into a component mode. And when I do that in component mode, meaning I just want to make a unique tile, it's going to pop up and say, you know, gosh, I hear what you're saying. And when I do that, I'll call it something that makes sense, center, so that I know that it's doing it. So now I have this unique, you know, tile for the center, and I can adjust the offsets. The same thing when you're in the interactive material builder. Let me come down here. Sorry, where is that tool? Somebody see that interactive? Where is it?
It's under adjust materials under 3D.
Yeah, I missed it.
Adjust materials.
Yeah, it took me a while to see it. So when I'm in this mode, again, I've got the same tool. So when I'm in this mode, I guess I didn't click that. Sorry. Component mode. I didn't click it. Create a copy of it. So let's go back. So you do need to make sure that when you're in that component mode, which I am in component mode, and I click it, and I'm just going to use that one copy. And now I'm only adjusting the center material because I'm in that component mode. It's not moving all 3 of those, right?
Okay.
Does that help with that?
Yeah, I think that definitely helps with that particular question.
And then separately for your large scale tiles, and you want that 3rd offset, that tool for the interactive material builder. So let's come back over into the material builder, right? And we did a session on this 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, I watched it and it just led me to more questions.
So this tool is available in X17 beta. When we release the full version, it will be available in the full version PC and Mac. So if you download the beta today and you don't see it on a Mac, anyways. So the material builder, when you go out and you're using this for tile, and I'm not necessarily the most expert, but you can control the size of your tile, right? And, you know, I might make that a little bit larger, and then you can change your offset. You said it was like 3rd offset, or
Yep.
sorry, yeah, 3rd offset. And it was a single tile, right?
Yeah, yep.
So then you can also upload an image of that tile in here, and then the program will take your JPEG image. It needs to be a single image of that tile though.
Like zeroed in, so on that it needs to be, and so it can just take that particular image and just scale it across whatever size. So if it's a JPEG, it needs to be no grout lines, just like the center of the tile, just the color, so then it can build it accordingly.
Right. Yep. And so this is a great tool to use, and hopefully this would save you some time if you learn how to manipulate this in, you know, to accomplish what you're trying to do. Lucas?
Yeah, no, I think that kind of answers it. So that was kind of the basis of the question was kind of, that's what this was intended to do. And the struggle that I've been having, like on this one of the last projects that we actually ended up building out, is the tile guy came to me and he's got really good renderings and really good pictures of what's going on. And, you know, he calls me out. He's like, hey, well, this back wall of this shower is a 1/3 offset, but the front is like a straight stack. And because I just let the material do its thing and let it replicate, you know, it's straight stacked. And they started cutting it as straight stacked. And I'm like, okay, I need to really dig into this and figure it out, because they're actually looking at it and they're actually digging into it and following it to a T for once, which is surprising. And I think it was that, and okay, if I need to do this, I need to make sure that I'm actually being a little bit more. And the CAD lines is an absolute time suck in that drawing, rather than taking that color and just pasting it as per se like paint, and then, you know, drawing in actually where I want every tile. So I think just taking some time and digging into this would be the best option.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for calling
Trainings
in.
have been great, by the way. So
Okay.
every other week thing has been awesome. So
Wonderful. Thank you.
thank you.
Great, Scott. Our last question is from Scott. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Scott. I'm from New Hampshire, and I got 3 questions, and I kind of got them prioritized. So if you don't have time to answer all 3, okay. But my first question is, when I get done with a project as it sits now, I'm using X16. I put them into like a completed folder. With the project manager, how would I could export them, obviously, and put them somewhere, but how do I delete them out of the project manager?
Okay. If you physically want to remove them, let me cancel out of this and open up the project manager. So you can right click on this and there's a delete option.
Okay.
So once you export it and you have it archived appropriately, then you can delete it. Now
Okay.
you could also move it to a folder, right? And when I switch to active, because I could create in fact, I have one called archived. You could create a folder, and then this is basically a filter, is all this is. And you could filter it if you didn't want to delete it, your option.
Okay. Now, can you go back to like the main list that you had with all your drawings?
Sure.
So that shows everything in all of your folders that are below.
So my folders below are a subset, and these are anything that I want to create. And they're basically a filter and a kind of a tagging system, right?
Okay.
And so when I click on one of these, when I click on baths, it filters any of the projects that I have that are bath related. So think of it as kind of a filtering mechanism, those folders.
Now, you have that one labeled with bath in the project file.
Right.
Does it automatically go and put it in that folder down below if you label it with bath, or do you have to put it in there? Okay.
No, it does. So let me clear out that folder. Let's open up one of these other projects in here. I'm going to flag this one to B. You have to do it, by the way, at the project level, okay?
Okay.
So I can't do it at the plan level, but if I do it at the project level, then I can add it to any of the folders that I want, and then, you know, the option to add a new folder if I need to.
All right.
Does that work?
That works.
Okay. That was question 1.
That was question 1. Question 2. So I have everything set up on the cloud right now. I use Google. I access my files from Google right down onto my hard drive. which means I can bounce from different computer to different computer and not have to export.
Okay.
Now, with that being said, if I go through and I play by the rules and use X17 with the project manager before you come out with your own cloud base, it's supposed to import everything into project manager that I have existing, correct?
So there's a migration when you do the installation. There's going to be a migration, and that will pull in your preferences and your template files, those kinds of things. Now, when it comes to your data, meaning your plans and your layouts and zip files that have your assets in them for materials, we don't do that automatically. So you would need to take those zip files, put them in an area, and then you could go through and import into the program by pulling those into X17.
Okay. So all of my drawing files won't automatically import into project manager.
They don't automatically import in when you do an installation of the program.
Okay. All right. I was just checking because I have stuff like materials lists. I have gone through and edited multiple times to add what the lumber yards have here locally.
Yeah.
So that's something that I add into every one of my jobs.
Okay.
So it's something I'm going to have to add in here also.
Well, do you use a template file with that information?
So the way I found the quick and easy way to do it for myself is to just go to the material lists, go to structure member reporting, and import one list. And if I have to I import that list and then I make edits to it or add to it, then I export it back out and save it.
Okay. If it's not changing much, maybe there's opportunity to save a little bit by managing that through your template file, but it's just a cursory comment.
No, I've tried doing, or I have it that way for some of the stuff that I have set up, like my dimensions, I like them a certain way, like every drafter does. And I have added it to that, but then it's go back, add it into that one. And I just had it change drastically because I lost 3/4 of all my LVL sizing.
Ouch.
Yep. So that was it, because that was my biggest thing, was being able to make sure that I can import my materials list. That was the third thing, was how do I get the materials list in there?
Yeah. If you can use a template, you might consider seeing if that can save you a little bit of time.
Okay.
Yeah. Anytime that I find I need to do something every time I start a new project, that's a good opportunity to say that maybe a template project.
All right. Well, thank you. That answers all my questions.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thanks for calling in.
Yep.
And gosh, I want to thank everybody for those of you that stuck around, and we appreciate your time. If you have the opportunity to see us in Coeur d'Alene late this summer, then we'd love to have you up here. 2 days of training, a lab day, and social and networking. It's a lot of fun. Also, just point you to a couple other things we have coming up. We have a boot camp for kitchens and baths tomorrow, and then the same residential boot camp next Friday. So if you're new or newer to the program, that's a great opportunity to continue your learning. Have a great day. Thanks for attending, and we hope to see you soon.